Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the first video of 2022 on my YouTube channel. And this is also kind of a tradition now where the first video of the new year, I will kind of do a New Year resolution and wishes to every single team heading into this season. And today, we're going to talk about all 28 teams and what are their New Year resolution and wishes that they want to achieve heading into this 2022 MLS season. And of course, we're going to start off with teams in the Eastern Conference before working our way to the Western Conference. And also, this is in no particular order. I actually completely randomized that the order of this is not actually the standings or where each team, of course, finished by the end of the season. And it's definitely not alphabetical order. So we start off with the new kid in the block, that is Charlotte FC, and their New Year resolution heading into their expansion year is just enjoy life. I mean, the first year of this team heading into MLS and in their existence, I think you can clearly see that they feel like they're just gonna be happy to be there. I mean, the squad building that they're kind of taking it a little bit slow in terms of building this team, and they're also banking on the fact that they're going to make some signings in the summer when they know a little bit more about their team. So that also means that it seems like they're probably not going to have a good start to the season, but I'm pretty sure their fans don't care. They made it. They made it to the top flight of American soccer. They're just going to enjoy life and enjoy their team to be in the jump into the deep end of facing all these tough teams in the Eastern Conference. For the Chicago Fire, their New Year wishes is get this new era underway in a better way than they did in the last new era that they're going through. So what that means is basically the Chicago Fire is kind of embarking on a new era now with a new logo, new head coach being there with this team, and that they're hoping that this time it's going to be a little bit better. Now, I'm going to say that, with them to kind of blowing up the team in the offseason and them having make a lot of signing to replace some of those guys that they of course decided to let go, it could be a rough year for the Chicago Fire. But that's kind of the process of a new era and begin another long rebuild, because the first year is going to be some growing pains, and for the Chicago Fire, all their hope is that even with the growing pains, at least they can get off to this rebuild, which I think is like the second rebuild that they are now undergoing in the past couple years, getting off to a good start. For Toronto FC, being back to being an Eastern Conference contender. I mean, with them making so much news lately in the transfer market, including potentially getting Lorenzo Insigne in the summer, there's no doubt that this team is not thinking about rebuild or anything. They're thinking about going to be back being the best team in the Eastern Conference, and that's kind of what they're aiming for, because when you spend that much money to get these star players, you are expected to be finished not only in playoff position, but considered be the best of the Eastern Conference. And especially with Bob Bradley coming in, I think with him being very successful in terms of working with superstar player on the team, I think this TFC team can potentially reach this New Year resolution and wishes that they can do. Now, moving on to another team that will be competing for the Eastern Conference crown is the New England Revolution, the defending Supporters Shield champ, and their New Year resolution is just simply win MLS Cup. I mean, last year was just such a huge disappointment, albeit they did win the Supporters Shield, and of course they break the record for the most point in a season, which will definitely be remembered, but it's not going to be as remembered of them lifting the trophy, and that with all the expectation that they had last season, it was a huge disappointment that they got knocked out in the first game that they play in the playoffs. So there's no doubt that this year the expectation is kind of almost an MLS Cup or bust situation, especially if they can keep some of their best player this offseason, which we know one of their best player in Tajon Buchanan will not come back for this team. But even if you take him out of the occasion, this is still an MLS Cup contender, and there's no doubt that their New Year resolution and wishes is kind of MLS Cup or bust. For the New York Red Bulls, I guess win the New York Derby and try to take back the superiority of New York being their city, and that make New York red instead of blue. I mean, there's no doubt that after this season, and especially with their hated rival winning MLS Cup, this has been a rough season for for Red Bulls fans to swallow, especially with the way that they've been in the league since its inception, and they haven't won an MLS Cup, and seeing their hated rival being in the league only 5 years and winning their first MLS Cup, that has to be a kick in the stomach with how it went. But one way to kind of make up for that is maybe win the New York Derby, trying to prove that they are still the superior New York team. I mean, I know at the end of the day, NYCFC fans will make that argument of them winning MLS Cup, and that at least they win a cup before they had. But at least getting the New York Derby, you can have that superiority of the team that you still kind of own the city. And when you also look at the last couple of New York Derby, the Red Bulls have kind of started to take that control back after NYCFC kind of started to creep into the discussion that they are the better New York team out of the Derby. For Inter Miami, well, I guess maybe just trying to enjoy what could be a tough season for them and just get through this season with them being in cap hell. I mean, we know that Inter Miami are very restrictive in terms of signing players now because they don't really have a lot of cap, and they're still suffering the consequences that they had making that illegal signing of Blaise Matuidi. But if they can survive this season and maybe just maybe be could sneak into the conversation with a playoff contender, I think that's all Inter Miami fans would kind of wish, or at least that's what this team would want in terms of their New Year resolution and wishes. For NYCFC, it's simple. Defend the crown. I mean, this is kind of something I always said about an MLS Cup winning team, where when you're the defending champion, you want to defend the crown. And I think for NYCFC heading into next year, and knowing today it was announced that Maxine Morales is going to be coming back to this team, I think there could be a shot that they could definitely defend that crown. Now, obviously, losing Tati Castellanos potentially this offseason is going to really hurt this team in terms of them potentially defending their MLS Cup crown. But they still have a lot of good talent player, and especially with all those signings that they made of those young South American players throughout last season, I won't be surprised some of them will of course step in to the spot that Tati Castellanos occupy, and will be just as good as the player that they're going to get a huge sum of money when they sell him off to Europe or either in South America. For the Philadelphia Union, just finished the job. So the Union, these last two seasons, it's been kind of disappointing that with them winning Supporters Shield that year in 2020 and then getting knocked out in the first round, and then last year they came so close of reaching MLS Cup. And I know there's going to be Union fans that's going to argue, well, if they never suffered the COVID outbreak, they probably would have made it to MLS Cup. I mean, I guess, but you never know. I mean, we will never know that scenario if there is a fully healthy Union team, that this team is going to be able to beat NYCFC and represent the Eastern Conference and MLS Cup. But that being said, with me talk about finishing the job in this New Year resolution is them just kind of finally reach MLS Cup. I mean, they've been so close these last 2 years, and they definitely have the talent to do so. Although I will say that they definitely need to figure out in terms of that number 9 position, especially. You can definitely see that even though Kasper Schmeichel has been a good goal scorer during the regular season, he basically got invincible in the playoffs. And actually I wouldn't just say that number 9 position is something that they need to look on, but that attack they need to of course improve, because that attack during the playoffs basically was just completely non-existent, and that they scored by far the fewest goal to get them all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. And if they want to take the next step, they definitely need to improve their attack. I mean, we know they have a good defense, but improve the attack, and they could definitely be a team that could reach MLS Cup. For FC Cincinnati, not win the wooden spoon. Okay, I think that's a little bit too easy to say as a New Year's resolution, because again, that's pretty obvious. But I think the one that maybe makes it a little bit least obvious is just be a respectable MLS team. Like we said this for the past couple of years, and I truly feel like this is finally going to be the year, with Chris Albright and Pat Noonan, and with the way that it seems like they're trying to maybe kind of copycat what the Philadelphia Union is going to do by bringing their staff. Maybe they will get to that stage. I mean, they're not going to be a playoff contender just yet, But at the very least, I really hope that, not just for FC Cincinnati's sake, but as a neutral, I really want FC Cincinnati to do well. It's been a disastrous first 3 years of them being in the league, and I think sometimes, the old saying that you always want to cheer for the lovable loser. FC Cincinnati is that lovable loser, and that they hopefully one day that they or not just one day, but this season is finally the season that they get off the foot of the MLS table and actually be a team that people should respect, and not act as kind of like a free points every time you face them. Orlando City. This is a bit of a tough New Year wishes. I mean, I was going to say not sell Daryl DK to West Brom, but then this morning I've just heard the breaking news of him going to West Brom, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the news of the week, which I will actually make the news of the week on Wednesday, because I hope I didn't make the same mistake I did a couple of weeks ago of not doing a news of the week episode on Saturday, because when you look at some of the news that has happened in MLS, there hasn't been a lot of them worthy of me making one. But I guess when I do one on Wednesday, I'm probably gonna have to use two boards to talk about all the news that has happened in the beginning of the new year. But I'll also talk about how I think that's a mistake that Orlando City just decided to sell Daryl DK to West Brom. And I guess now I have to kind of come up with new wishes, and that is be a competitive playoff team. I mean, this is a very strange team that Orlando City has heading into this upcoming season. In some way, you could even say that this is kind of a downgrade team, with the way that there's no Nani heading into this upcoming season, and now they're just lost their most lethal goal scorer. I guess their New Year resolution is just keep being competitive and hope maybe find some replacement for those guys, because those guys that they lost, I think it's going to really affect this Orlando City team in the upcoming season. For the Columbus Crew, have a bounce back year and pray to the injury gods that they're not going to suffer an injury crisis again. I mean, it's pretty obvious last season that, besides the injuries, I will also say that, the back line kind of regressed badly, but mostly it was the injuries that really just kind of killed this team and any resentment of them potentially making the playoffs, and they become one of the rare team to win MLS Cup and then miss the playoffs on the very next season. So, for the Crew, they hope to have a bounce back year and just pray to the injury gods that they're not going to have an injury-riddled season like they did last year. For DC United, obviously their New Year resolution wishes is the fact that hope that the front office will give what Losada wants. I mean, it is pretty clear that, Hernan Losada was working magic last season with a DC team that was still kind of a Ben Olsen team, and the fact that they were able to be just on the doorstep of making the playoffs is just simply remarkable. But that being said, there's an old saying that as good as a head coach could be, he can only do as much unless the quality of the team improve. And I think the quality of this DC team, last season, I think Hernan Losada kind of pushed the limits and really got the best out of his team. And I just think with the current squad that they had, I don't know if they have enough to potentially get to the next level, which is why it is very important for the front office of this DC United team to give the resources for Hernan Losada to build a team that can compete for the playoffs and get into those playoff positions. For Orlando United, well, I guess the New Year resolution for them is once kind of see TFC. I mean, last season they did make it to the playoffs, but it was a very underwhelming exit with the way that they are. But I think last year it was just such a chaotic year for this Atlanta team. They start off the season poorly. Gabriel Heinze eventually getting fired, and then they went on a relatively good run, and then we thought that with Gonzalo Pineda getting hired, things were going to be at a way where they're going to look like that Seattle Sounders team that we've seen in the past to have a second half resurgence and make MLS Cup. That obviously didn't happen, and I guess heading into this year, expectation once again is going to be high, and you could also say maybe Pineda is going to be under the hot seal a little bit more, because there's one thing to have that honeymoon period that he has with Atlanta right now, but with this team having such an expectation, he is expected to perform well with this team. And when you look at this squad, and especially I am expecting they're going to make some more signing. I mean, they already are making some signings right now, albeit I think one thing that they need to do is definitely figure out how they can maybe replace some of the pieces that they lost in the back line, because they definitely lost a lot in that spot. And especially if they are going to sell Miles Robinson and George Bella this offseason, that's almost the entire back line that they lost this offseason. But when you look at the midfield and the attack, it is still a very, very decent team. And again, I said it before and I'll say it again. If you have Joseph Martinez in your squad, you are guaranteed to make it to the playoffs. Like, he is literally a cheat code. And knowing that in the latter of last year he started to look of his former self, I won't be surprised he's going to be gunning for the Golden Boot again this year. For Montreal, their New Year resolution this year is not only making the playoffs, but be that dark horse team. I mean, I said it before, they have the pieces to do so. And while they don't have like the flashiest name in the league, they are a team that I expect to be very hardworking, and that I even said that I compare them to the Colorado Rapids, where, you know, they have a good head coach and have the pieces that they need to make a playoff run. And that's going to be something that hopefully for Montreal they will do so. I mean, I think this is really the first time that Montreal is heading into this season with a lot of expectation. And I've seen before where they have had years where they had a lot of expectation and it did not live up to it. So, you know, for Montreal's sake, maybe this is going to be different. I mean, I think it's going to be different. Like, when you look at this team, this is probably one of the best Montreal team that I've seen ever since they come into the league, and especially with a head coach in Wilfred Nancy that has really proven to be one of the best head coach in the league. They are going to be a team that I think is going to fulfill their New Year resolution of being a playoff team and compete in the Eastern Conference. For Nashville, now we're going to talk about the Western Conference. And even though Nashville was in the East, they moved to the West this year, at least temporarily. For them, well, I guess it's get a chance to play some new opponent, and also once again show that, you know, that last year where they of course, or the first 2 years that they have shown a miraculous run isn't a fluke anymore. Well, actually, I wouldn't say that. Let me just kind of reword a little bit. Them kind of showing the next step that they can be a contender in the Western Conference. I mean, again, you know, playing against there's going to be some new teams that they're going to be playing in the West, because throughout their first 2 seasons into the league, they haven't really got a lot of chance to play every single team in the Western Conference, and especially in their second year with how restricted. Well, in their first year it was restricted with the COVID outbreak, and then the second year they were in, they only get to play 2 Western Conference opponents. So it's a great chance for Nashville to play against some new team that they never played, but also the fact that it's going to be interesting to see. You know, this is a very fascinating kind of situation where we haven't seen a team move from the West to the East or the East to the West in during an off season, and see how they of course do well. I mean, I know that Nashville, of course, they were in the Western Conference before moving back to the Eastern Conference, but that was because of the COVID outbreak. And yeah, that was just such a chaotic season that I don't think that should obviously count. And so it's going to be interesting to see how Nashville will do in the Western Conference, and whether they can do much as well as they were in the Eastern Conference and make a team that is one of the toughest teams to beat. Like, this team finished the season with the fewest losses. Well, actually, I wouldn't say the fewest losses, but tie with the fewest losses, because I think with that, along them and New England, they would tie with 4 losses that season. They're a very tough team to beat, but we'll see whether or not if that's going to be the case now that they're in the West. For the San Jose Earthquakes, well, I guess their New Year resolution is kind of the same as the Chicago Fire. Hopefully this new era can kick off in a good way. Though I will say that unlike Chicago, that is actually rebuilding, I don't think heading into this new season the Quakes are really rebuilding. I mean, when you look at the team, I mean, I think the new era part is with not only new GM Chris Leach making some signings that I've never seen the Quakes ever done before, which is making interleague signing, but also the fact that this is the first year in the 11th season that, or actually not 11th season, I think 13th season, that the Quakes are not going to have Chris Wondolowski in this team, and it's definitely going to feel weird and feel kind of different to not know that Wando is actually not going to be with the Quakes this year. But this was also a good opportunity for them to kind of seeing a number nine can step up from this team. I mean, right now I'm expecting that player to do so with Jeremy Abova see it up, and the whole reason why we signed him the off season is that he looked like he could be the replacement of Wano, and he definitely has that quality to do so. But overall, it is a new era for this team, and especially with some of the signing that I expect Chris Leach going to make. A lot of these signings are probably going to be signings that maybe is going to be in place once Almeida does leave this team, because again, the future of Mateus Almeida is still up in doubt. And I guess maybe one of the other New Year resolution is maybe hope that Almeida does stay one last season before he move on. I mean, I know there's been a lot of critics in the Quakes fan base about Almeida and him being very tactical naive, but I've always been an Almeida guy, and I will always back him no matter what well, except maybe when things get really bad, which there's been times that has happened, but I would back that Almeida is going to figure it out, and that if this is indeed his last season, because his contract I think expire at the end of this 2022 season, then hopefully we can finish give him a good run in the playoffs, or even maybe just maybe win something for him before he head off to another team. For Austin FC, their New Year resolution is build on the momentum that they had in the second half of the season and maybe be the best team in Texas and winning Copa Tias. I mean, they came so close last season of winning Copa Tias. If they would have beat Dallas on the road, they would have won the Copa Tias. And especially I talked about how the momentum that they had in the second half of the season, it looks very promising, and especially with the team that they had, this looked like a team that maybe is finally starting to figure it out and could be a team that be a playoff contender. Now, I've said before where whenever a team had a good second half of the season, there's no guarantee that they, of course, will do well heading into the beginning of next season. But at least when you look at this Austin team, something tells me that could be the case. And yeah, I just have a feeling that again, Austin is going to do well and fulfill their New Year resolution heading into next year. For the Seattle Sounders, well, I guess the New Year resolution is trying to forget what happened last year and once again be an MLS Cup contender and reach the final game of the season once again. I mean, that's been kind of the New Year resolution for the Sounders for the past couple of years, and it's not going to change even with the lingering fact that Rudy Diaz potentially could be leaving this team, and that we'll see whether if they can maybe improve their depth, because I think one of the things that I've mentioned why the Sounders kind of crippled down the stretch was the injuries that they suffer, and they're really not the deepest team. But nevertheless, as it is the case for many years for the Seattle Sounders, their New Year resolution is simply just win MLS Cup, and it's like MLS Cup or bust kind of situation, and it's not going to change heading into this season. Speaking of a team that their New Year resolution is also MLS Cup or bust, that's the game from Sporting KC. I mean, this last year, just like Seattle, they suffer a really disappointing way, and was really maybe their best opportunity to win MLS Cup, and it's going to be tough for them to try to rally the squad once again and trying to get back to that same stage. But there's no doubt that they have the talent to do so, and especially now potentially them getting a good number 9 in maybe replacing Alan Pulido whenever he goes down with an injury, because he's been very injury riddled throughout his time with Sporting KC. I think this team is going to get to that next step, and that again, their New Year resolution is simply reach MLS Cup and win the whole thing and have some unfinished business. For the Houston Dynamo, their New Year resolution is just hope that the rebuild and some of the placeholder that they have will make them a competitive team. I mean, there's not a lot that is expected of this team heading into this season, even with them getting a new GM and getting a new head coach. But hopefully they can get that rebuild going well, and also hope that maybe they will be a team that could surprise some people, that some of the placeholder that they have could actually do well with this team. For the Colorado Rapids, it's pretty simple what their New Year resolution is. finally win a playoff game. Like it's pretty clear that these first 2 years, I mean, especially last year, it was such a disappointing way to end the season with the best season in their franchise history and then getting themselves knocked out in the first round at home. And now that they do have that playoff experience, and pretty much this Rapids team is basically coming back with the same team and with the same head coach, this team should be a team that once again compete for those playoff position. And once they do get into the playoffs, hopefully this is the time where they can finally win a playoff game. For the Portland Timbers, well, I guess their New Year resolution is hope that they can re-sign Sebastian Blanco and hope that he's going to be the next Diego Valeri. I mean, it's kind of remarkable the fact that they still haven't been decided to re-sign him to a new contract. Like, I just wonder what's taking them so long to do so, because it's a no-brainer to re-sign a guy that seems like we saw last season with Valeri started to kind of dwindling down his career with the Timbers. The pass of the torch have now gone to Blanco, and it just makes perfect sense now that they need to re-sign him so that they can continue to be a competitive team. And yeah, I mean it's pretty, as I said, it's pretty simple. Them getting Blanco to lock up on a contract extension so that they can once again be a team that could be an MLS Cup contender. For Minnesota, their New Year resolution: please sign someone. I mean, I know that sounds very very simple, but let's be honest. This has been a disastrous offseason for this Loons team. With them losing a lot of players in this offseason due to free agency, and then obviously having their best player in Emmanuel Reynoso still locked up in jail. This is just the worst case scenario for this team heading into next year. That was supposed to be a year where I hope maybe some of these players that underachieved last season can actually live up to his potential, but that doesn't seem like it's doing the case ones with the way that this team looked like, or at least this front office is kind of going for a little bit of a soft rebuild. But at the same time, I still feel like they need to sign someone. Like I feel like this would be a bad time for them to really think about doing a soft rebuild, because they still have the talent to get them to be a decent team. It's just that you just gotta hope that some of these players eventually live up to their potential instead of maybe just kind of blow it up a little bit and once again rebuild again. For FC Dallas, their New Year resolution is hopefully maybe sign a player that actually do well, that is not from their academy. I mean, we know that their academy is going to generate another Ricardo Pepi or another well talented player that is going to be moving up to Europe, because they are considered one, if not the best academy in the league, and I won't be surprised we will know another youngster and a wonder kid that comes out of FC Dallas. But really the big point for this team is that they need to figure out their scouting department and actually signing a player that is decent, because most of, if not all, the signings that they have that is not from their academy and from somewhere else has been a huge flop, and that just cannot continue if you want to be a team that competes for the playoffs. And we'll see whether or not if they can, of course, reach that New Year your wishes and resolution heading into this year. For the Vancouver Whitecaps, their New Year resolution is kind of continue that underdog kind of mentality and continue to believe in Vanni Sartini. I mean, it's pretty simple with the way that Sartini has really, they gave a lot of good passionate ways to this team and have really generated so much confidence to this team. There's no doubt that they're hoping that that's going to continue heading into next season, and that they also hope that it's not going to be once again a setback. Again, this is another team that I will also say that, despite having a good second half of the season, it's not always guaranteed that that's going to continue into next year. But if it is, then there's no doubt the Whitecaps are in for a special season, and that's one of the wishes and resolutions that I'm pretty sure a lot of Whitecaps fans are hoping to. For RSL, their New Year resolution, well, the simple way to say it is find a new owner. But I think the other thing that they might want to do is make sure they keep Albert Rusnak and pay whatever he needs. I mean, there's been rumor of Rusnak potentially leaving to the Seattle Sounders, and if that's gonna happen, yeah, that's a really bad news if you're RSL. And it is also tough for them to, of course, keep him, knowing the fact that with no new owner and MLS kind of controlling their transfer and stuff like that, it's always kind of a tough situation, which is why, again, as much as it's easy to say that their New Year resolution is finding an owner, it's true. Like, they need to have an owner, and they need someone that can, of course, control the team and able to maybe sign some players that can be developed well to get this team back into the playoffs, and hope that last year that playoff run and that Cinderella run to the Western Conference Final was not a fluke whatsoever. But we'll see whether or not if that's going to happen, and most importantly, we'll see whether or not if they're going to eventually sign Ruchnak to a new contract and not sell him off to the Seattle Sounders. For the Aoe Galaxy, their New Year resolution is simply make the playoffs and trying to forget what happened last year. I mean, it was such a disastrous collapse that they suffered last year. And even though I want to say it's kind of a little bit of an improvement that Greg Vanney did in his first year, it's kind of almost overshadowed with the collapse that they had in the second half of the season. And now heading into this year, I'm pretty sure for Greg Vanney and for all Galaxy fans, their resolution is just get this team to the playoffs and trying to get into stage two of what should be a new era and a rebuild that this Galaxy team is on a spot where they're looking to try to be going back to being one of the best team in the league. And then finally, we talk about their intercity rival, LAFC. Their New Year resolution, well, it's the first thing that they need is to find a head coach, but also them kind of hoping that some of the new pieces and also some of the core that they still have can actually generate an MLS Cup contender team. I mean, if Carlos Vela is going to be back healthy this season, and if Brian Rodriguez is going to kind of start to live up his potential, and not to mention if Chicho Arango continue to score goals every single game, this team should be an MLS Cup contender. Like, there's still a lot of talent on this team, and it's kind of shocking the fact that with all that talent, they somehow still missed the playoffs last year. But hope that they can, of course, do so, and also hope that they, like Columbus, pray to the injury gods that they don't have an injury crisis, because they kind of had that a little bit, losing a lot of important players last season for majority of the year with injury, and they're hoping that that's not going to be the same case heading into this season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it for my New Year resolution and wishes for all 32, or not 32, 28 MLS team. We haven't got to the point where we're at 32 team yet. Maybe down the year with how expansion is and with how it seems like we always get a new team every single year, we might get to that stage where there's 32 team. But as of now, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of my New Year resolution and wishes for all 2018? And if you're a fan of your team, let me know in your comments below, what's your New Year resolution for your club heading into the 2022 MLS season. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.